All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Beyond the Ballot. Today, or in this video, I should say, we're going to be taking a look at the state of Arizona. And Arizona obviously went to Trump in 2024 and went to Trump by 5.5 points. And throughout the election cycle, we were told that Arizona was one of the main 7 swing states, with the other thing Nevada, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, and North Carolina. And we were told that these were the 7 swing states that could go either way. And what's funny about Arizona, or what this last election showed, is that, well, if we're considering Arizona a swing state and Trump is winning it by 5.5%, then we certainly would have to consider New Hampshire a swing state, Minnesota a swing state, even New Mexico, New Jersey, and Virginia as swing states also, as well as Nebraska's second district being a swing district. So now you're looking at a lot more, because if we go into the presidential map here, you can see that Trump won Arizona by 5.5, like we just showed you. But you take a look at New Jersey, well, that was a 6-point win for Harris. Really not that much more. And same with Virginia, was a 6-point win. Minnesota was a 4-point win, so actually less. The margin of victory in Minnesota was less for Harris than it was for Trump in Arizona. And so Arizona, really, if we're going to define a 5.5-point margin as swing state, then we need to start talking about all of these other states as swing states as well. Virginia, New Hampshire, New Jersey, Minnesota. But of course, the mainstream media leans left, and they'll do everything to force the narrative that Republicans don't have a chance in these other states, and they want to make the map seem as promising for Democrats as possible. And one of the ways they do that is by basically pretending that Minnesota is out of reach, or New Hampshire is out of reach, even though it very much is. Harris only won New Hampshire by 3 points. But looking at Arizona, it obviously moved back to Trump. Biden won it narrowly by less than a percentage point in 2020. Trump brought it back in 2024. But Arizona remains an interesting state overall, not just at the federal level, but also when we look more deeply into it. First, let's take a look at the Senate election results, because, again, Ruben Gallego won the Senate seat there. Carrie Lake was the Republican, and she was unable to defeat Gallego there. And you see Maricopa County, Carrie Lake losing that by 6%, and Trump actually winning Maricopa County by 3%. So huge difference there. And that's where Phoenix is, and so there are a lot of votes there. And so Gallego winning that by 6 points, it's not really surprising then that he would come away with a victory overall for that Senate seat, as he did. But what this kind of shows is Arizona isn't an all-out red state yet, but it is moving that way. They're still going to be discerning voters, and Carrie Lake was really kind of a weak candidate. She was when she ran for governor as well, and she was again when this past election when she ran for Senate. So Republicans put up a weak candidate in Carrie Lake, and they got burned for it. And so you can't just throw up any scrub and expect to win in a state like Arizona if you're Republicans. but the trends are overwhelmingly positive for Republicans in Arizona. Obviously, we saw huge improvements with Hispanics for the Republican Party. They made huge gains with Hispanics, and there are a lot of there's a big Hispanic population in Arizona, of course, being right down there near the southern border, and so improvements with that demographic are going to help Republicans immensely in a state like Arizona. But Arizona's House district map, as you can see, has a little bit different shading than the previous states we've done. So we did Alaska, we also did um, Alabama, and what you see is in Alabama, I'll just do this quickly, is a lot of safe margins, right? So again, safe margins are 12% or more for either party. You really only have that second district in Alabama that isn't a safe margin presently. And I talked about that in the video we did on Alabama. And uh, Alaska remains a safe state for now, but like I was saying in that video, it seems to potentially be trending left, not quickly, but it is moving left a bit. But we see perhaps something a little more interesting in Arizona. We see all these different shadings. So if you don't recall, this darkest shade of both blue and red is a 12-point safe district. This slightly lighter shade of red is a likely margin. It's a likely Republican district. And what that means is Republicans are winning it by 7 to 12%. This even slightly lighter version of red is a lean Republican margin, and that is a 3 to 7% victory margin. And then there is one more shade, which is that, which would indicate a tilt margin, which would be 0 to 3% victory margin. So that's just to explain why you see these different shadings and what they mean if you didn't already. And so obviously in Arizona, it looks a lot different from that, from the South, which is a bunch of 12 percentage margin of victories, 12+% margin of victory for either party there. You see the capacity to move and potentially flip seats in a place like Arizona. And so if we go back and we look at the actual election results, you can see here pretty easily that, of course, there are the deep red districts, District 9, District 5, and then there's the deep red districts, District 7, District 3. But then there's ones where you could see some movement. District 6 got a lot of attention. That was Siscomani versus Engel. Juan Siscomani was facing Kirsten Engel. And, obviously the biggest issue down there, or one of the biggest issues, is a very winning issue for Republicans, which is border security. And so Juan Siscomani ran on that. And, we saw a pretty typical House representative seat fight where you had the Democrat focusing on a winning issue for Democrats, which is abortion. You had the Republican focusing on a winning issue for Republicans, which is the border. But there were really two races that people thought could go either way: this first district and the 6th district, with the 6th district being the closer race. But both had Republican incumbents. Schweikert and Siscomani were both incumbents, and they both held by lean margins. So Siscomani by 3 and Schweikert by 4. But in a true swing state, I think you would at least see some district that is a tilt margin, right? That is this color, and we don't, which indicates more and more that Arizona is not actually a swing state anymore. That the districts are starting to decide where they're really going to lean, what side they're really going to side with, and that trend is showing very much in favor of Republicans. And so you see a strengthening of support in a place like a District 2, which Eli Crane won by 8 percentage points, right? And you see that in these districts uh, where people were saying Democrats could potentially give the Republican a run for their money. And it ended up not being that way. I mean, certainly 3% is still close, but that you really, in a true swing state, would see some tilt margins in these districts. The districts are good representative of sort of whether a state is um, polarized and flippable at large by looking at the individual district. So if there's no district that's a tilt margin, it indicates that the state is becoming less and less swing and is coalescing around one side in particular. And this is a very positive sign for Republicans. Obviously, they overperformed, or at least Trump overperformed with Hispanics, which again is a huge population in Arizona. And their numbers only seem to be increasing with that demographic. And that's what leads me to believe that Arizona, come 2026, well, the midterms are a different story. So I'll say come 2028. But we'll talk about at the federal level. So the presidential races, in particular. I think Arizona won't be a swing state by 2028. I think it'll be a reliable Republican state. And I think that the Republicans' numbers with Hispanics will continue to improve, which means in a state like Arizona, they're going to solidify their victory margin even more. But we saw a big move to the right here in Arizona, and all trends indicate that that is going to continue. And so that's what leads me to believe that that Arizona is not going to be a swing state in a 2028 presidential election. And I also think that the holds of District 1, 2, and 6 by the Republican is only going to strengthen them in future elections. And I think that certainly their incumbency, combined with the state moving right, will keep those districts reliably red. And then we're looking at maybe gains in a place like District 4. So in District 4, Greg Stanton won that by a little over 7 points. So still a likely Democrat margin, but what does that look like? How does that change if trends continue and Republicans begin to solidify more and more their support in a state like Arizona? You could see a district like the 4th district become more competitive, as competitive as some of these other districts were this election cycle, like a 1 or a 6. So very positive signs for Republicans in Arizona. And I expect that trends will continue. It'll be interesting to see what Trump's popularity rating is come the midterms and how that might shake things up. Keeping an eye on some of these races that were close in 2024 to see how they differ. But then also, seeing these statewide elections and how those shape up, whether Republicans expand their margins in the state Senate and the state House, which they already own both, but they do have a Democratic governor presently, because, like I said, Kerry Lake has lost that as well. So I don't know. Maybe Arizona should just stop running Kerry Lake, and they would have won the Senate seat and the governorship. But all indications are that Arizona will continue to move right, and that it will actually become a reliable uh, Republican state, and they can expect in 2028 to win Arizona again by a probably 6, maybe even 7 point margin, making it a likely Republican state, pushing it into that likely margin. So, very positive sign for Arizona. An interesting state to keep an eye on due to all these districts where you could potentially see some movement due to the fact that it was considered a swing state this election cycle, but when all was said and done, really looked more like a lean Republican state, in the same vein that a New Hampshire or Minnesota was a lean Democrat state. So I think it'll be interesting to see how Arizona is looked at in upcoming elections, how it's talked about, whether Democrats will even try to campaign there or whether they'll switch their strategy. But obviously, when Arizona was only going to Republicans by 1 or 2 points, Democrats were a little more optimistic about the gains they could potentially make there. And of course, Joe Biden won it in 2020 just barely. But a 5.5 point victory for Trump is a different story. And I'm going to be doing a 2028 election map estimate once I'm done with all these videos focused on the specific states, and I'll indicate why the electoral map overall is just a lot of warning signs and giant concerns for the Democrat Party, why Republicans should feel very confident about their standing and where they'll be in future elections. Arizona being one of the states that's a good indicator of that, with its heavy move to the right and the improvements with Hispanics. So, guys, thanks for watching this video. I really appreciate it. Like and subscribe and comment, so I can know what your thoughts are. I obviously like engaging with everybody who has comments to offer. And if you have any ideas for insights or videos you would like to see, certainly let me know in the comments, and I will do that.